read a quick statement, and then you either agree or disagree. Okay. So I'm starting the interview with Cecil Harper. Okay. This opening establishes the release and permission to your likeness and image in a video and or audio recording. You hereby give me the consent to B Story Pictures or any subsequent company that houses the East Hammond, the Village Grapevine project. Further, you acknowledge that you give us for gratis, irrevocable, worldwide rights in perpetuity, regardless of whether the materials are used for advertising, promotion, education, publicity, or for any other purpose on behalf of the company. The acquired digital files will remain the property of B Story Pictures, its subsidiaries and agents. Finally, you have waived all rights, claims, and damages. The exploitation of all recordings and oral history is acquired for the purposes of education, history, and the upliftment of the city of East Hammond and its residents. You attest that you fully understand the aforementioned. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So I'm going to start out by, so just tell me your name, your age, and what street you grew up on.
My name is Cecil J. Harper. The J is for Joseph. My age is born in 1933, so that makes me 83 years old. I grew up, born and raised at 1028 Field Street.
Okay.
Right across the street from where your mother eventually moved to. From Starkville, I think it was Starkville, Mississippi. They came from.
Exactly. They came from Starkville, Mississippi. And I guess it was Lily McClendon, or Lily.
Lily Williams.
Yeah, Williams, because she married Williams first, and then eventually she married Ben.
Yeah, Ben McClendon. Oh, you remember those people?
Oh, yeah. So in your house, tell me who'd you grow up with in your house? Like, tell me your dad and your mom and all those.
Yeah, my dad and mom, there was 5 siblings.
And name them too.
My oldest sister their name was Stella Mae. She's still living. Then had twins, fraternal twins, Elmer and Thelma, P-H-E-L-M-A, Thelma.
Okay.
And they were fraternal twins. My mother had the distinction of being the first black woman to birth twins in the city of Hammond.
Oh, okay.
That's any significance.
Okay, no, that's
And Grand Blackman's mother was the second, and Roel Blackman, who you interviewed, was one of the fraternal twins. Second.
Okay, so your mother was the first.
Yeah.
Now, what's your mother's name?
My mother's name is Jessie Mae Harper. She hails from Greenville, Mississippi.
Okay, and what's your dad's name?
Stanley H. Hampton Harper.
Okay.
He grew up he was born in Clinton, Mississippi, right outside of Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay, so you guys are Mississippi, Southern family.
Yes, my folks are.
Okay, so let me ask you, why did your father decide to move from Mississippi here?
Well, he never did tell me, but later on, one of his friends told me that who knew him, that he can get a better employment working in a foundry up here. So
Okay.
he came up and he worked in Pullman Standard Car Manufacturing Company.
Okay.
They were making train wheels.
Okay.
And so he was one of the first blacks, during that particular area. That was in, I guess that was in the early 20s when he migrated up here.
Okay, early 20s. Okay. Now, did he meet your mom in Mississippi, in Clinton, or where did he meet your mom? Or do you know?
I think he met her in Greenville, with my understanding.
Okay. Greenville. And so did he marry her there and then bring her here, or did they get married here?
He got married here, with my understanding.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so he worked at Pullman Standard. What was his job at Pullman Standard?
He was a molder's helper. They made the molds for the wheels, train wheels, and he was a molder's helper. He helped the molder in the process of whatever his job was,
Oh, I get it. And so how now? Did your mom work while she was here?
She worked at Brooks House for the nursery. She was a cook for the nursery there. Not
Oh.
the nursery, but they had a little something what is called a daycare center. Kids who were 5 to 8 years, who were preschoolers, would go there. You know, while their mothers worked or whatever.
Okay. So she was the cook there. So now, do you remember going to Brooks House and hanging out with your mom any there? Can you tell me a little bit about Brooks House?
Oh, Brooks House was the focal point of East Hammond. It was what you might call a community center, but in the it was founded in 1919, and it was more or less a center for trying to, you might say, to try to educate the Europeans who were coming here. What we didn't call them GPs then, but they were immigrants from Europe, mostly Polish, Italians, Germans.
So was Brooks House originally white oriented when it first?
Yeah, it was definitely white oriented because at that time of its founding there were no blacks in the city, from my understanding. Like 1919, I think that's when it was founded. And blacks didn't start coming to Hammond until the early 20s.
The 1920s, blacks started coming. Okay, and so because I saw a picture at in the library of Brooks House, and it was like maybe a group shot of all white people. So that's why because I asked Fran about that. She goes, "Oh no, I thought it was mainly black." And
well, Glam was. It depends.
she's an later generation.
Yeah, it didn't. I tell you, well, let's see. Blacks didn't start coming there until, they start coming there in the late 20s or maybe early 30s.
Okay. Now when did your mom work in the Brooks House?
She worked in the. Let's see.
I know in the nursery, but when at what
She worked in the 50s.
in the 50s.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so
Late 40s and.
late 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And so you were at that time you were what, 10 or something or?
At that time, I was going to grammar school, so I must have been,
Okay, about that.
At that time, I was about maybe 12 years old.
12 years old?
10 to 12 years old.
Okay. So what do you remember about Brooks House?
Everything.
Okay, tell me some things about it.
For us, it was a recreational center. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we used to go there, and they used to give what they call today they give food and some necessities like bread and milk and rice and beans and things of that nature. They would get that out maybe once a week. In fact, sometimes you can go up there anytime if you ask for a loaf of bread or something like that. They would give it to you. And the name of the bread, I remember, was clock bread. I always remember.
Clark bread?
Clock.
Clock, like a clock. Okay.
Clock. And then we would go up there for recreational purpose. After we got out of school, we would head to the Brooks House. We played ping pong. They had a game room. Played basketball there. That's where that was the focal point. You didn't see you in the schools, during the school hours and so forth. Meet up at Brooks House.
Okay.
Get together at Brooks House. And we had various clubs. We had a club that called it the Challengers. And in that particular club, the McClendon boy, Gerard.
Yes.
His father was in there. A fellow by the name of Cecil Ferguson. Became assistant art director for Ebony magazine. And we had Jim Harper, outstanding high jumper, in Indiana, Big Ten indoor champion.
So now Jim Harper, is he related to you?
He's my second cousin.
Your second cousin, okay.
Yeah. And he and I were always at each other's throats, fighting. The only fights I had 95% of my fights with Jim Harper,
What's your cousin?
with my cousin. But I wasn't fighting for myself. I was fighting for a mutual cousin that we had together. His name was, we called him Chiwi because he was a short guy. But his real name was Howard Davis. And he just recently passed about 6 months ago. And he would always pick a fight. And he would always ask me to come and bail him out. And all the fights, sometimes he would have a rhubarb or something, a run-in with Jim Harper, and he would say, all right, come and get me. So usually by his being a little fellow, the littlest guy in the group and everything, I would go and bail him out, I guess, because he was my cousin too. But then when we started working for the bowling alley, he got in a fight with a guy by the name of, his last name was Matavina. And Matavina was really scared of Chiwi. We called him Chiwi. And so they picked a fight, and they were fighting right there. But Matavina would always stick out his jab, you know, and Chiwi would bow his head and run right into the jab, you know. And so after I found out that Chiwi was getting the worst end of the scrap, the fight, I broke it up. I didn't. So I had to tell him, I said, hey, you pick these fights, you're 15, 16 years old, you're going to have to defend yourself. I said, I'm not going to let anybody take advantage of you if I can help it, but I'm not going to pick up your fights, you know.
Right.
When you start them, you know.
Yeah, I'm not your side man. Okay.
Right. As strange as it all was, after the Korean War was all over and everything, and he had been in the Air Force, then he went to the Army, got wounded in Korea. I think he said they were in retreat. Because he got shot in the buttocks, you know.
Oh, okay.
And
Now, did you go to the war too?
no, I was in college during the war.
Okay, you were in college. Okay.
So I was.
And you went to, tell me.
I went to the service after I finished college.
Okay. So let's get back with your life growing up. So you lived on Field Street, and you grew up with was it 4 brothers and sisters?
I had 3 sisters and 1 brother.
3. Okay, so 3 sisters and 1 brother, and then your mom and dad on Field Street, and then your dad was working at Pullman Standard. So tell me a little bit about who lived around you, your neighbors, like your neighbors to your right and your left and across the street, just so I get a feel.
Well, at that particular time, all the blacks were more or less grew up. They were all in a box, more or less. The 1000 block of Fields, street that you know about. 1000 block on Conkey. 1000 block on Ames going south, and the 1000 block on Kenwood. Now on Mall Street, in the 1000 block, there were no blacks at all.
Okay.
They skipped Mall Street and they went over to Cleveland. In Cleveland, there was 1000 blocks, 1000 block also. So everything was confined in the 1000 block. 1 block north of Field Street was Merrill. The 1000 block of Merrill had 1 family, Howard Davis's sister, married family. Their name was the Burtons. Hutton, the last name was Hutton. Mr. Burt Hutton was the father, and he had a son named Freddie, and my second cousin, Chiwi's sister, married him. So they were the only family living in the 1000 block on Merrill Street. And in the 1100 block, there was also 1 black family.
Okay. What year was this that you're describing?
I'm describing the 40s, the mid-40s and 50s.
Mid-40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Okay. And so...
Actually, the mid-40s, because up until the mid-40s.
Okay. So tell me, what families were living to your right and left of you?
So to the right of me at that time, when I was born, There was a name of the white family. I don't remember the white family name because I was really too young to know them. But the first black family was Fran Blackman and Roel Blackman's grandparents.
Okay. What are their names?
Warren Blackman and Christine Blackman.
Okay.
And they had four boys. The oldest one was named Robert, but they called him Rabbit. And that was Franz Blackman's father and Roel's father. The next one was Warren Blackman. He was the first black milkman in Hammond.
Okay, Warren Blackman is the first black milkman.
He
Okay.
worked for Borden's Dairy. I don't know if Borden's Dairy is still in the business, but it was one of the leading dairies in Hammond.
Okay, so Borden's. Okay.
And after Warren came Blackman became Jerry Blackman. He was a good athlete, high jumper and broad jumper, and played basketball. He later went to Indianapolis and was a barber. Then after that came Garvey. He was so-so. Then Krim Blackman he was really the best athlete in the family, other than the oldest one, Rabbit or Robert.
Okay. So you said Clem or Krim?
Krim.
Krim. Okay. Krim Blackman.
Krim
Okay.
Blackman. Krim Blackman Krim was the secretary of Marcus Garvey. And Marcus Garvey came over, I think he came from Haiti,
Right.
and he was trying to come over, and I think Lincoln or somebody wanted him. I think he came after Lincoln, but supposed to lead all the blacks, take all the blacks back to Africa.
Okay, so this is critical. You said that Krim was the assistant or secretary to Marcus Garvey.
Yeah, Krim was, yeah. And Mr. Warren Blackman named his son, his baby son, Krim Blackman, Krim being after the secretary of Marcus Garvey. Now, how true that is, I really don't know. It must have been true because he named the son older than Krim, he named him Marcus Garvey. And Garvey, I think, I don't know what his, he was the individual that came in, and he was the one who was supposed to take all the blacks back to Africa.
Right.
Marcus Garvey.
Right.
Krim was his secretary. So he named his last two sons, he named one Marcus Garvey Blackman after Marcus Garvey. Then he named his other son Krim Blackman after the secretary of Marcus Garvey.
Okay. All
We're getting a
right.
lot of history here.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Okay, so the Blackmans were right there, and
They
your
were
neighbors.
right to me. Yeah, they were right on. I stayed at 1028, and they stayed at 1030.
Okay.
And eventually across the street, after the white family moved out, there's a white family there, and they moved out, and Roel Blackman and Fran Blackman, they moved in, so they were living right across the street from their grandparents. And they stayed there until, I guess it was in the, it was in the 50s, because I remember being a tutor for Roel and her fraternal twin, Roland. She
Okay.
hired me to be a tutor for them. She would always pay me. They had a little delicatessen downstairs. And she would always make ham sandwiches and malts, you know. That was more or less my pay, you know. I wasn't charging her anything, but to show her gratitude, that's what she did, you know, which was all right.
Oh, okay.
I wish I
Okay.
had one of her ham sandwiches now.
So okay. So we have the Blackmans, and who else was in close
Well,
proximity?
we're right across the street, about 10, let's see, that should be about 1023, was the neighborhood doctor, Dr. Dennis A. Bethia. And he was the one that brought me into the world. And when I had gone to med school, after my first year, he was getting up in age, and I used to give, shots and draw blood for him, because I had the medical school 1 year at IU at that particular time.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about Dr. Bethia. And
Dr. Bethia was, I think he was originally from North Carolina. He always called it, either your Creole or Geechee or something like that. So he had that stigmatism or that nickname back to him that he was a Geechee. So I understand he went to, I don't know where he got his degree. University of Chicago kind of rings in my mind, because Meharry, the black college, and Howard, only two black colleges when I was coming along, medical college, weren't in existence at that time. So he gave a little short story in the papers time from time about his becoming a doctor. Then I think he settled in one town in the southern part of Indiana. I think it was Evansville or something like that, before coming to Hammond. When he came to Hammond, he was the father of two daughters by his wife. I don't know anything about his marital affairs, before his last two daughters. I didn't know his first daughter, but his second daughter grew up with us in the neighborhood. Her name was Norma Bethia. But we always said that she was a little eccentric in a way of speaking, because she was still wearing she wore the afro about 20 years before it came in style.
Oh, okay.
And she went to Indiana University, become a librarian. And then when I went to med school down there, some of the girls remember Norma. They said, "Norma, you're from Hammond?" I said, "Yes." She said, "You know Norma Bethia?" I said, "Yeah, we grew up together." She was about a year or two older than I was, but right in the same neck of the woods, And her mother always kind of thought that Norma was a little goody two-shoes, a little better than the norm of the neighborhood, because nobody in the neighborhood had a father or parents, a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher, nothing like that. They were all factory workers and domestic workers working in white people's home, doing domestic work, cleaning up and etc. So Norma, I remember when she had gone to school, and for the summer she brought home two Africans, for the holidays, Christmas holidays. And everybody was saying, well, that was well-to-do, that maybe she should, being the doctor's daughter, that maybe she should put a little Christmas cheer out there in the neighborhood, some of the kids that she every day, instead of just at school time. But I know what it was more or less a matter of goodwill, American hospitality, they were way over in Africa. And so she brought them on for...
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I understand that Dr. Bethia was one of those doctors who just did house calls all around.
He did the house calls until he would do a house call anytime, but when he got up in his 70s and 80s and so forth, he wouldn't do any house calls. He would go to bed about 8 o'clock every night. And if he came there wanting to see the doctor, his wife was sort of the dominatrix or whatever you want to call it. She was sort of the dominator. She would just treat doctor like he was a little child, Well, you can't see the doctor's taking his rest. And I remember when Ebony wanted to interview him, and he came and was standing out on the porch to give them an interview, and she called him in and said she didn't want them to bother the doctor. So Mr. Boondeck, he was a white fellow that still stayed in the neighborhood. He would always take doctor around, drive him around, and doctor was his doctor,
What's his name, Mr. Boondeck?
Yeah, Boondeck.
Okay. Is that Boondeck? Boondeck?
No, DYCK or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't spelled the way it's pronounced.
Okay, okay.
So anyway, Mr. Boondeck, nice guy, beautiful person. His father owned a building about 4 doors away from where I was staying, and after his father died, he remained there.
Mm-hmm.
He got married and had a kid. And when his kid was growing up, he moved to Cal City, but he would always commute back and forth. And as long as Doctor was alive, he was his more or less his chauffeur. And also the McClendon boys, Gerard's uncle.
Mm-hmm. What, Bill or
Bill, yeah.
Okay.
They used to take Dr. Pathia around too. They were very close to the family. And so Doctor was, he was a nice, quiet guy. You would know he was around until unless he spoke or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you could tell he was well indoctrinated with that Southern mentality of Uncle Charlie and Mr. White Man, Yes, Boss, and so forth and so on. He still, you can see traces of that in him,
So even though he had a white man driving around, he still adhered to that Southern mentality of talking?
Well, yes, because I remember one time, and he's talking about, it was, February, Black
History Month?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wasn't Black History Month then, it was Negro History Month, see.
Okay.
Black was to be called black was almost like being called a nigger. I got in more fights by somebody calling me black. Only time you want to fight with somebody call you a nigger is if a white guy call you a nigger. But it's open season for another black to call another black a nigger, But if you call them black, man, you better be called a nigger than be called black. Because black was, hey, they say black stay back, white, you're right, brown stick around, yellow, you're mellow,
Okay.
That's the way it was. That's the way. Hey, man. And I mean, my mother had a little picture of a little black girl with pigtails fanning herself, and there was a little black boy behind her. And she was looking over her shoulder telling him, she said, "Run along, sonny. I didn't order no coal." My mother had that picture. I remember seeing it up on the wall and everything. So black was, black was everything that was ominous or detrimental or morbid or related to death or distasteful, was black, They even named, what color is devil food cake? Have you ever eaten devil's food cake?
Devil's food cake? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what color is that?
Devil's food cake, was that black?
It's dark brown.
Yeah, dark brown, right.
For all purposes, brown and black, interchangeable terms.
Right.
Have you ever heard of angel?
Angel food cake is white.
Right. So everything black, even cake, and even called the oil. They call it what? Black gold.
Black gold.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to take the black out of it, but it's still a lot of importance, but they want to still attach that blackness to it because, then anytime there was a storm coming or something like that, they always say, what kind of cloud? Oh, there's a dark cloud out there in the west. There's a black cloud coming this way. It's going to be a hell of a storm or something like that. So everything at that particular time, then when James Brown came along in the 70s and something, black is beautiful. Everybody wanted to be black, but not reality.
Right. Oh, the song was "I'm Black and I'm Proud."
I'm black and I'm proud. Everybody black and I'm proud. But I remember the librarian, Norma was the first black librarian, Norma Bethia was the first black librarian. She was up at Brooks House where they had a branch to the main library down there on State Street. And
now, is that the same time that Miss Durr was there?
No.
She was before Miss Durr?
She was there in the 50s and the 60s. Miss Durr, in fact, I was instrumental in getting Miss Durr the job at Brooks House.
Oh, okay.
The white lady retired. Her name was Mrs. Erickson. she had a hip replacement and everything, and she got too old to handle the job. There were no more, there weren't any black librarians at that particular time. So Norma came in. Then Norma had more or less a mental problem of trying to adapt between what her mother wanted her to be and what she really was. Her mother had her playing the violin. She wanted to be out there, you know, maybe at the roller derm, skating with the kids and everything. And her mother, because I remember when I came from school, I came out of the Army. And I was right across the street. And my mother told me that Norma was out there a week before that particular time trying to push her dad's car. Said, "Come on, Dad, you're late for work." She was buck naked when she was out there, you know. So she had a mental breakdown, and she kept lashing out at her mother because she thought her mother was responsible for her demise, you might say, or her breakdown, pushing her too far beyond her limitations, you know, educationally primarily. Then her mother, she was very outspoken and not really what you would consider a doctor's wife to be or any professional's wife to be, you know. Very caustic. I don't know anybody she associated with. She tolerated quite a few people. And then one time she was trying to drive Doc around, and she wasn't a very good driver, and she ran up on the lawn and ran and crashed into a house, you know. So she was really bad news. And then when Doctor died, you would think that, you know, they would eulogize him or have his funeral at the biggest Baptist church, which was Mount Zion at that particular time. But they took him to a white mortician, Burns, you know. And they had the funeral at, they didn't have it in the neighborhood. Even they could have had a memorial service that went on for him.
So the biggest funeral home at the time for black people was Warner, wasn't it?
The Warner wasn't.
Oh, Warner wasn't there at the time?
Let's see, was Warner there? Yeah, Warner was there at the time Dr. Kidd died. I think he hadn't got established, but he was there. But they had a Miss Libby's. They had a white funeral home right where they had the pool hall. Where Roy's father, they had a pool hall. Then they finally turned it into a lodge, a Masonic lodge, because Miss Libby's moved up there on Columbia Avenue. In fact,
it's called Masubi's?
Miss Libby's.
Miss Libby's.
MYSSLIWY or something. Miss Libby's.
Okay.
So anyway, he went up there on Columbia Avenue, and then he finally moved to East Chicago. In fact, your father had his fish store in what used to be a Miss Libby's funeral home, you know, years ago when I was coming up, and I was a teenager.
Okay. Now, the fish store was on Columbia, down there.
The street,
Yeah. And so there was a funeral home there initially?
Initially, when the Libby's moved from Conkey Street, the middle of the block of Conkey Street, which eventually became a pool room or Masonic lodge, he moved to Columbia, on Columbia Avenue, which your father really turned into a fish store. It was another store, grocery store, before your father bought him out and turned it into a fish store. And then he moved, Miss Libby's moved to East Chicago.
Okay, and that's where Dr. Bethia had his funeral, in East Chicago.
No, he had it at Burns. Burns was down on Holman Street.
Oh, on Holman
Burns
Street.
was actually about the biggest white
I see.
mortician at that particular time. And I don't know where they buried him, but they buried him. They wouldn't bury him like in Fern Oaks, where the blacks were buried. Now they bury him right over there in Concordia, right behind White Castle. But she said that she buried him, I guess, in a predominant, it was probably all white or something like that, by his being a doctor and had that status and everything. They didn't, they didn't, no prejudice or racism, whatever you want to call it, keep him out of there. See? And I think I asked her, or somebody asked her, said, why didn't you have his funeral at Mount Zion, largest Baptist church at that time, in Hammond, East Hammond, and why you having buried like that in Fern Oaks or something like that? She said, well, doctor had to get his rest. She said, and all those black folks out of work, buried out there in Fern Oaks was probably disturbed. Dr.
Disturb them.
Disturbed for getting his rest. That's just how essential she was. So I guess Norma, her daughter growing up in that environment, didn't have too much of a chance with her mother's
Centricism.
Yeah,
right. And so even though it was, the funeral was at a white establishment, did a lot of the blacks that he helped in East Hammond go to the funeral?
No, I really can't answer that question. I know I didn't go, and I know I would have gone, because I really didn't know, the time, date, and everything else. There wouldn't have been any discrimination, or they wouldn't have, disallowed anybody from attending who wanted to attend. There's not really too much discrimination when you're gone.
Right.
But there's still some, some cemeteries, Catholic and whatever.
Oh, right.
And unless you're a Catholic, you can't be born there. So, when you come into the world, if you're black way back then, and maybe to some degree now, you're racist, you're stigmatized and discriminated against from the cradle to the grave.
From the cradle to the grave.
You
right.
probably don't know that.
No, I've seen my share, but not to your extent.
Yeah, you heard more about it than you saw.
Oh yes. And well,
when it came to you, you knew exactly what it was because either your parents or your grandparents or somebody you knew from the old school experienced it.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so moving from Dr. Bethia,
he's a good man, though. See, the reason why I was telling that he was still indoctrinated with that Southern, Mr. White Man and Uncle Charlie and the White is Supreme and so forth, because he gave a speech on Negro history, auditorium session at Hammond High, and he mentioned two little white girls or something. He said, "Oh, the two little white girls were too pretty and too dainty to be walking the streets, as if they, by their being white and so forth, they were goddesses or something like that, or something over and above the norm of what you expect humans to do." The two little white girls, oh, they were so pretty and dainty, they were too pretty to even be walking the streets. I remember it stuck through my mind down through the years, And but he was a good man, but he's born and raised in the South, so he just adhered to some of those mannerisms.
Right. He's just as indoctrinated mentally into the Southern ways of living.
Everybody liked him. They said, well, Dr. Bethia, if everybody paid Dr. Bethia the money they owed him, he'd be a millionaire many times over.
Oh, okay. So that leads me to just ask, since he did all these house calls and stuff, you just alluded to the fact that a lot of black people may not have had the money, but he treated them anyway?
Yeah, he treated me. But let me make it clear, I know I was born at home, so he delivered me. I guess you would consider it a house call. But since he stayed right in the neighborhood, he didn't have to make too many house calls unless it was kind of late at night or something like that. Because everybody, hey, he lives right on the next block over, so why you want to call him a house call? You can go right to his office. So that making it house calls, that was something of, an emergency or something, maybe late at night, he would make a house call. But as far as his making a house call on a day-to-day basis, he wouldn't have to make a house call. He's right in the neighborhood, right across the street, down the street, or a block away.
Right, so if you were sick, you just got up and went over his house.
Went over his house. And you wouldn't pay him, you say, well, Doc, I'll pay you when, Okay, do the best you can,
Okay. So do you think people took advantage of that?
Yeah. Some of the guys who used to go there to get that shot, get some penicillin because they caught a STV or something like that.
Oh, I get you.
They got a doc. I used to get caught shots like that in the service. I worked in since I had gone, I was a medic. I hadn't gone to med school, but I majored in, pre-med biology and chemistry and everything. So they stuck me right there, made a medic out of me, and then put me right in the dispensary, I was giving the guys the shots and everything, and tell them to come back in 3 days. Okay. So he was more of a community-oriented service person. So I guess he had to make a living. So enough people paid him to keep his lights on. They would pay him. I kind of think really that was really a little bit overblown when they said that they wouldn't pay Doc. But some people didn't have it, and some people just took advantage of it. But he wasn't hurting for them.
It wasn't hurting. Okay.
He wasn't hurting for them.
Okay. So his heart was big in the sense that even though he knew people didn't pay, he would treat them anyway.
Yeah. And that's when they start calling me Doc. I used to go over there to Dr. Field. I always wanted to be a doctor, see, because when we were kids, we played football and every night the old boys always wanted me to patch them up, put Band-Aids on them, alcohol or, whatever the case might be, everything except setting a fracture or something like that. Just a little first aid, a bloody nose or something like that.
Right, little stuff, right.
So I had two names. I had the name Doctor and I had the name of King Kong because a lot of times we'll have little racial scraps, Somebody call you a nigger and we'll go over there and beat up on them and so forth.
Okay.
I remember one time, we were going to high school at the time, and one of the kids from the north side went to a pool over there by Edison on the south side, and he was flirting with one of the guys, his girlfriend or something. So the guy he was flirting with his girlfriend and pushed him in the water. So he went back and told all of his boys, and they were going to have a showdown over at Civic Center, north side against the south side. So some of the north side came and got us, and some of the south side came and got us. And we said, hey, we can't tell the north side from the south side. So what we're going to do is get in a little circle, and all we're going to do, anything white that we saw, we were going to fight, And we came from the north side to the south side. But there happened to be a couple of cops, white cops, that still lived in the neighborhood. 1100 block of Merrill Street, and which was, at that time only had about one black in the 1100 block, one or two families. That was near the end of the block. And so I think we called him Smitty, or I'm not just remember, but he said, hey, called us by our name. We knew him and everything. Yeah, he said, what's up, Smitty? He said, well, we know what's going on over there. He said, do me a favor, and go back on your side of the town, okay? So we took off and went back.
Is this a black cop or white cop?
White cop.
White cop.
Wasn't no black cops in.
Oh, at that time.
No.
So what's his name? Ronnie Rowe didn't come in at that time.
No, Ronnie Rowe didn't come in at that time.
Oh, okay. So when you say the north side against the south side, but you guys are East Hammond.
Yeah, actually, it's really, we're more or less Central Hammond, but it used to be called the Maywood, like this part.
Right.
Where it came, Maywood. It's called the Maywood neighborhood. It wasn't ever called East Side or West Side, something like that.
Okay.
But when blacks infiltrated and took over, we were east of everybody else, where we were conglomerated into this little ghetto or neighborhood, East Hammond neighborhood.
Okay, so East Hammond evolved into East Hammond, but it was originally the Maywood district group.
Yeah, see, we still got some school, Maywood School. This was Maywood Park. We still call it Maywood Park, the old timers do, even though they call it Dr. King Park now. Everything.
Right, I called it Maywood because I grew up in where they filled the park filled with water, in the winter, and then it would freeze over, and we would go ice skating on
You remember that?
Yeah.
You gonna fool around and tell your age, man. 'Cause I thought they cut that out.
Well, they cut it out a long time ago, but to be honest with you, when I was looking for you to drive by, I walked over and I saw the name of the park, and then I looked at the building. It said Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
I said, well, wait a minute. I thought this was Maywood Park.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah. You hadn't been.
I haven't been here.
Not up to date.
Well, you know what? I just never saw that sign. I've been
Yeah.
here the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I know you.
But I just never saw that sign.
Yeah. If somebody now say, hey, they say, man, hey, I'll meet you over there at Maywood Park, you know. Or they call that the annex there over there. So they don't call it. They think they got it over there. Something about the Veterans Park or something like that. Instead of isolating and try to get it a name. So I tried to get a name after two of the fellows who lost their, members of the neighborhood who lost their life over in Vietnam. Lorenzo Stiegel, not Lorenzo, his brother Nathaniel Stiegel, and
Nathaniel Spiegel?
Stiegel.
Stiegel.
Stegal, Stiegel.
Okay. And then who's the other gentleman?
He was Ira Gibbs.
Ira Gibbs. So they both from the neighborhood, but they lost their lives in Vietnam.
Yeah. Ira Gibbs was married to Royal's baby sister. Her name was Thelma.
Okay, Thelma Blackman.
Yeah, Thelma Blackman. And she was married to him, and then she got killed, and then she later on married a guy by the name of Winston, Cal Winston. But anyway, so I was pretty prominent, and then I was the EEOC officer. That was during that, when they were talking about, well, I'm trying to see, I'm kind of getting a little Alzheimer's. But anyway, when was that issue that came in that was supposed to equal the grounds for
Affirmative action?
affirmative action, yeah.
Yes.
So I was the affirmative action officer in the EEOC when it came out, see, because everybody who weren't getting government funds, if they had an affirmative action officer, and he would fill out an EEO4 form telling how housing, how the city was tearing down discrimination and segregation and integrating the neighborhood.
Yeah. Oh, and EEOC, by the way, was it
Equal opportunity.
Equal Opportunity Committee?
EEOC.
Okay.
Equal Employment, EE.
Okay. Equal Employment Opportunity
Officer.
Officer. Okay. Okay. And so so that was through.
You're right. Equal Employment Opportunity.
Okay. Commission or whatever. EEOC. C stands for community, or
No, I said EEOC, but community does stand for community, but it wasn't the EEOC, it was EEOO,
okay.
Equal Employment Opportunity Officer.
Okay. All right.
But it belonged to the EEOC, which was the commission in Washington at that time, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
Commission. Okay, I got it now.
And this lady.
And that was also regulated through HUD, Housing and Urban Development.
No, HUD was a constituent, a part of. It kind of regulated HUD. If somebody was trying to discriminate against you at HUD in housing or something, or redlining you in the bank, then you would you would go to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, where you can't discriminate with this and that. In housing, housing was one of the big things. Housing, education, and schooling. How I said education. Yeah. So I was able to tear down a lot of barriers, and so when it came to this park and so forth, I said, well, just name that a Veterans Park or something like that. I said, we had 2 guys gave their lives in Vietnam. I said, let's name one park after each one of them. I said, name Maywood Park after Lorenzo Stiegel. The reason why there was name take preference over Ira Gibbs, because he was born and raised there. Ira Gibbs was born in East Chicago, and he didn't come to Hammond until he was, going to high school, or maybe in a late education. So I was figured that the dominant part should be named after the person who was the more deserving, having been born and raised there. So the precinct committee men, and they had a rhubarb here and there, so they didn't name anything. So the mud hole over there, I was still 8. When I was the EEOO, I really danced. I usually kind of held it over the mayor's head, He said, anything you want, Harper, within the guidelines, go for it,
Well, who was the mayor at the time?
Mayor Clinton.
Mayor Clem?
Clinton, K-L-E-N.
Okay, Clinton. I got you.
Mayor Clinton. And the way I got in with him one time, East Hammond used to decide who the mayor was going to be, because everybody else, was sort of a Mexican standoff, you might. Well, it was evenly divided. But the 3rd district, which East Hammond is located in, would more or less tip the scale as to whom the mayor might be. And usually the Democrat got the nod, see, because they figured that blacks had a hard time under the regime of the Republicans, which they did at a given time. But the Republican Party was actually founded to do away with slavery. That was the main reason that it was founded, pre-Civil War, or during the time of slavery. But anyway, as time finally metamorphed or became, the party of the rich.
So when
they took them out of slavery, and then they wanted to.
I'm sorry. You said something that I just have to ask about and address. You said that the Republican Party was formed to abolish slavery.
Yes, sir.
Okay, in what respect? How would they do that?
Well, by the way they did it, Emancipation Proclamation.
Okay.
I mean, what I was saying is that if you do a little history or a little research on it, the founding of the Republican Party, one of the reasons why it was founded, I'm not saying that's the sole reason, but one of the reasons was about it.
Okay, hold on 1 second. The motorcycle. Wait, hold on 1 second. You know what?